What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers. And if you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about how to understand the stages of the rut. So to get started, I want to talk about that the rut is not necessarily the same every single place in the country. So you may be new to hunting or not and just be like, hey, how come the rut by me is not what's showing up on this guy that I'm following on social media or whatever? And the reason is the different parts of the country that you're in, the rut is different. So let me explain that. So mostly this is going to be affected by how far north or south you are. The further north you are, the more compact the rut is going to be. It's going to be crammed into a very small window of the year. That's why states like Wisconsin have such a great deer hunting culture, because the rut is so tight in those northern states that it makes for an amazing hunt when all of those bucks are going crazy with all of those does at the same exact time. Now, the further south you get, if you get down into like Alabama and Florida, you're going to have to go ask those guys how their rut works, because I still don't fully understand it. It's multiple times a year. It's on and off here. It's going on in this part of the state, but not in that part of the state. And the reason being is in the far north, it gets cold out in the winter. So the does have to be bred at a very specific time of year, because if they're bred too early, those fawns will be born into the snow and there will be no cover for them. It will be too cold for them. There will be no food for them and they will not make it. Now, if they're born too late in the year, meaning those does were bred late season, those fawns are going to be born in the middle of the summer, which is great. There's plenty of cover, plenty of food. It's warm, but they don't put on enough body weight to get them through the winter when winter comes. So they end up dying off in the middle of winter. So over years and years and years of this happening, these does have had their estrus cycle crammed into a very, very tiny window, especially when you're talking about those big snowfall regions along the Great Lakes between like Duluth and Buffalo, New York. So like those are those areas that you guys are going to have a really crammed rut into a very small window. And if you can get into that, it's about a week long. If you guys can get in there, take your rutcation, sit that entire week, you're going to see more deer activity that week than you do all of the rest of the year. And then as you head south, so even south into like southern Wisconsin down into Illinois, you're going to start to see that 1 week window open up a little bit more, to the point that maybe by the point you're in like southern Illinois, that might be about a 3-week window now. And the rut activity is not going to be as intense over that 3-week window, although you will have consistent deer movement and the best deer movement of the year over that 3-week window. Just imagine though, if all that movement in that 3 weeks was crammed into 1 week, that's what you're getting up in those Great Lakes regions. So that's why the rut's just so intense, why Wisconsin's such a huge deer hunting state. So all right, now that we kind of understand why the rut is, when it is, or how it is, or how long it is, and why it might be different in this area than that area, let's talk about the actual stages of the rut. So right now we are about a week and a half into October. I already have what I consider the first stage of the rut happening right now. And that is that those does are starting to kick away their nub buck fawns from this year. Those nub bucks are starting to sniff around mom. They're starting to sense something's in the air that they've never sensed before. And those does, in order to prevent inbreeding, are going to kick those nub bucks away from them. Now, some of these nub bucks are going to just take off and go live 1.5 miles plus away. Others will try to kind of shadow her through the woods. You'll see this going all the way like Post Rut too, that all of a sudden mom and doe fawn come in. Maybe a little while later, a couple 100 yards behind, a nub buck comes in. Most likely that's her nub buck fawn. He may overwinter with her, or he may just go find his own territory at this point in time. But this is the first sign that the rut is about to happen, is those does start to kick their nub buck fawns away to prevent inbreeding. She does not want to get bred by her fawn from that year. Now, the second thing that you'll know that the rut is about to happen, and this is going to happen in about, I would say, a week or two here, or over the next 2 weeks, and that is that those young bucks are going to start chasing or roaming. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more daytime movement of those 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks. They're going to start hitting up those scrapes. They're going to start keeping those fresh. You're going to start seeing a lot of rubs in the woods. You're going to start seeing that rut sign in the woods. but mostly caused by those young bucks who are a little too eager to get started. Those old guys know they got a little bit more time before the real work starts happening out there for them. So you'll see these young bucks wandering around. You could sit. It's a great time to get bucks in front of you. You're probably not going to get those big 3.5, 4.5 plus year old bucks in front of you during the daylight this time of year. Maybe right before dark on a food source or something. They're still going to be keeping those normal patterns. But as far as the roaming, chasing bucks, you're going to get those 1.5, 2.5 year olds this time of year. Great time to just get out there and kind of see what's going on. You're going to start seeing them push herds of does around. You're going to start seeing just some chasing in the woods. You'll hear some blowing off in the woods if those bucks are kind of annoying those does too much. They'll start blowing off there out in the woods, and you'll be like wondering like who busted them out there. Nobody's even out there, and it's a young buck chasing a doe, and she wants absolutely nothing to do with him at that point of time. So you're going to start seeing that. Now the next stage, now we're heading into the end of October here, about that last week of October. This is when those big boys are going to start moving. They're going to start wandering around trying to figure out where exactly the does are, where the does are feeding, where the does are bedding. They're just doing a little recon out there, but they will start doing that rut activity, those scrapes, those rubs as well. And they will continue to do that into November. But now we'll actually have all of the bucks up on their feet during the daylight, wandering around, chasing does a little bit, but mostly just kind of checking stuff out, getting that recon in. And then what will happen the first week or 2 or 3 of November, depending on where you guys are, is going to be what most guys consider to be the rut. So this is going to be when those bucks start fighting. Those bucks are going to really start chasing those does, really start wearing them out. And this is when, if you guys are sitting in a stand, you guys want to use those rattling horns and those calls, this is the better time of year to do it. Don't be out there making all that noise in a high pressure area if you're not in this specific part of the year, because if you're trying to go out there and rattle in like early October and you're in a state like Wisconsin that has a ton of hunting pressure, all you're going to do is scare those deer away. They know that's not a natural sound in the woods that time of year, and those bucks are not eager to come hear what's going on over there to check it out either. So just make sure that if you are using those calls and those scents and all that other stuff, you're really aiming at the end of October into early November time period for that stuff, not early October or any other time of the season. You're just going to actually scare them away with that stuff. So once we get through the rut, this is that time that those bucks are chasing. They're going to tire those does out. Eventually those does are going to give up the chase, and those bucks will breed those does. This is what we call the lockdown. So once a buck does tire that doe out and she is willing and able to take on her fawns for the next year, this is called the lockdown. They'll stay together from anywhere from like 1 to 3 days and just not move. They're just going to hang out together. That buck and that doe are just so tired from chasing that they're just going to lay there. They're going to breed several times in that time period, and then they're going to go their separate ways after that. Now, once this is all over, you guys, if you're out there hunting, might be like, we had a ton of movement. I was seeing deer everywhere, and now I have nothing. There's nothing left on the camera. There's nothing when I sit. That's because you're probably in the lockdown. Then what'll happen after that is you're going to go into what's called the post rut. So you should start seeing those bucks nocturnally again on your cameras. They'll be out. What these bucks are really trying to do is find some food and find some water. And those does will be too if they were chased for that whole period of time. But those bucks are going to be looking to replenish all those calories that they burn during the rut. It's a great time to get on an afternoon sit on a food source or on a trail that leads into a food source from a bedding area, because those bucks should be hitting up that high quality food on a pretty consistent basis in this post rut. Now, they may not even get there till after dark. They might just be so tired that they just aren't even there until after hunting hours, and that's kind of the downfall of the post rut. But your best chance, if you still haven't filled a tag by that point, is to hunt those food sources. Make sure you have water holes in, or you're hunting a water source. Those bucks, even during the rut when they're chasing, they'll skip food quite a bit, but they will not skip water. They will hit a water source up during the rut. So if you can hunt near water or put in a water hole, excellent place to be during these times of the rut. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the second rut. And so the second rut is for any of those does that were not bred during their first cycle. They will go into estrus again about a month later, and that's going to be about that first week of December. Now, the other thing here is those doe fawns, who are only 6 months old, will cue off of their mother's first cycle in November, and they will have their first cycle in the beginning of December. So you're going to have some estrus does in the woods that first week, second week of December. So this is when you're definitely going to see that second rut. And this is nowhere near as intense as that first rut. Those bucks do a pretty good job of breeding the available does in the first rut, but there will be some lingering does and those doe fawns that are out there in estrus that are going to create some movement for you, similar to the rut, but not as much because not everybody's playing the game that time of year, but you will see it that time of year. So that's what the second rut is. You could even argue that there would hypothetically be a third rut at the beginning of January for any other does that were not bred. Obviously, when we start talking about does getting bred in December and January, their fawns will most likely not make it through the winter if they're in those harsher areas. So this is something that may happen a lot more down south, which is maybe why in Alabama, in Florida, why you guys are having ruts all over the place, because these does estrus cycles are all over the place and you're just not seeing the same consistency in the rut as we are in the far northern states. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.